Hello everybody, Jose Rodriguez here. This is going to be one of those videos that's going to attempt to try to cover everything you basically need to know. And I said basically, not everything. If you are considering printing at home, printing what? Photos, of course. That's what we are interested in doing, and that's what our goal is if we are photographers who do not do online work or anything of the sort. We want something tangible that we can hold. So, what if you do not even have a printer yet? How do you go about choosing from the many models that are available and you really have no clue what they offer, what you should be looking at? So you first have to kind of ask yourself, what is it that I want? Of course, prints, right? But how large a print do you need? What kind of media do you plan to possibly print on? Are you just going to make glossies? Or are you going to make some canvas that can then be stretched on a frame? Yeah, that will cover pretty much the gamut. Glossy, luster, semi-gloss, satin, all of the different fine art coatings, all of the matte media types available, all of that. But we're first going to concentrate on just capacity, whether I'm going to just print nothing but color, or combine color and black and white, or only monochrome. Many of us just do monochrome printing, and so we can choose a model that will then lead us down that path to give us the best possible outcome. So if you're just going to print monochrome, you need a printer that offers grays. Okay, you need both blacks. If you're going to do both types of media, you need to kind of look at a pigment-based printer. And that pigment-based printer better have matte black and photo black. Photo black is the glossy black, and matte black is, of course, the matte black. It is stronger, it is denser, so it will produce deeper shadows or deeper colors, if you will, in the deepest tones of your images, especially when printing, of course, on matte paper. Matte paper just doesn't have the dynamic range of a glossy paper, so it needs a little bit of help. Now, capacity, like I said, what size do I need? What is my max size? Well, figure that out very carefully and then choose the largest model, okay? I recommend that you do that because I guarantee you sometime down the road, you're going to wish you had a larger capacity printer. Now, what printers are available that cover that pigment ink base that will allow you to print both in all the fine art medias, including canvas, whether it is a glossy canvas, yes, it does exist, or a matte type canvas, and of course all of the other watercolor papers, all the rough texture papers, and of course all of the papers with sheen, including papers that have a barita coating or barium sulfate coating that pretty much kind of approaches the look of a wet lab print. And those papers are usually used for printing monochrome. That's what they excel at. Okay, so what's available? Well, in the letter size capacity, really nothing's available. In other words, 8.5 by 11. The only choices for that would be your regular all-in-one or office type printers. They may not be a pigment based, may only be dye based. And we'll delve on how dye based ink printers can be used to print photos. But really, your starting size would be a 13-inch wide capacity printer. And depending on the brand, it will allow you to not only print, say, 13 by 19s or A3 Plus, and also panoramic type photographs. Now, Epsons have a longer length capacity than regular 13-inch capacity Canon printers offer. So that may be something that you may want to consider if you want to print longer than your standard 13 by 19 on a 13-inch capacity printer. If you need to print longer, then Epson. Canons are kind of tapped out at 25.6 inches, around there, give or take. If you never have a need to print a panoramic image, then by all means, you can choose either one. Either brand will offer pigment-based printers. Now, what if you're only going to print glossy? That is all you're ever going to do, glossy or luster paper. Then you need a dye ink printer. That's the best choice for that type of media because it just provides you the brightest, strongest, and most pop that you can possibly imagine that pigment simply cannot provide you on a regular, say, multi-purpose printer like some of the pigment printers models offer. So to get into this a little deeper, let's just go ahead and cover the models that are actually available out there that are for current prosumer or consumer level users. I'm not going to touch on anything that is considered professional, meaning for a studio type environment, but for home. So for 13-inch capacity dye ink, we have the Epson 1500 and the earlier versions 1450, 1440, and I think 1430. I haven't really kept tabs on those. And the venerable that I still have, 1400. I don't know whether you can find those around at all anymore, but you can find the 1500 version, and I think they even have a 15,000. Those are dye-based printers. Fantastic on glossy, luster, satin, and all of the RC or resin coated type papers. They will give you that beautiful look on glossy paper. Now, let's say we want to also print on other types of media, then you really are forced to use a pigment-based printer. 13-inch capacity, we have the Epson P600 currently now. That is a great 9-color printer. Pretty soon, within months, the P700 will be available with a 10-channel printhead and also utilizing 10 colors so that you get a very large and wide gamut. If you just want to print on a glossy and also matte, the P400 printer is fabulous for that because it has matte black ink, photo black ink, but also uses a gloss enhancer that will give you that beautiful glossy look on your glossy papers without having to resort to a dye ink printer. That covers the Epson 13-inch capacity family. There are some older printers like the R3000. Basically, it's the same as the P600. Same ink set, same everything just about. Now, we're going to stay with Epson for now. 17-inch capacity P800, soon to be replaced by the P900. That should be out and available very, very soon. Again, the same thing. 9-color versus 10. And what does that mean? Well, for those of you who may not know, yeah, the earlier versions of these Epson printers had to share one black channel because the printhead had one less channel that it needed. It should have had 9 because they had 9-color ink palette, but it only had 8. So both blacks sort of had to take turns, if you will, being used. And that is something that's not going to be required any longer with the new versions. 10-channel printhead, 10-color ink set, boom. No more black ink switch valve. If you want to know more about that, there's a lot of information online and on YouTube about those valves and their failure rates. Okay, so what did we talk about? We talked about 13-inch wide printers, the P600, P700 coming up soon, the P400 that has an 8-color ink palette, great for color and also for glossy paper. Not so great for black and white, I should have said, because it does not have any grays. All right, 17-inch P800 currently available now. P900 shortly it will be available, and that's the one that I would choose. The only caveat is instead of an 80 milliliter cartridge, it has 50. Footprint wise, it's a smaller printer, so they had to take a compromise in the size of the cartridges to make everything shrinking a little bit smaller. I don't know why they did that, but anyway, it's there. And it also has the ability to print on roll, both the P800 as well as the P900. So that is a separate accessory you can buy. Okay, let's stop about Epson printers. Let's deal with Canon now. Canon 13-inch capacity printers. We're not going to touch anything else but the home user versions of these printers. Pro 100, boom, the most popular printer ever, probably. A color dye ink, fantastic on glossy, fantastic on anything with a shine, a sheen, whatever you want to call it. Not so great on matte media. Now there's ways around that. You can create profiles, but we won't get into that because you don't even know how to profile yet. All right, so that covers the dye ink side. Pigment base, Pro 10 and the Pro 1000. That's it. Pro 1000 is 17 inch. Pro 10 is 13 inch. No roll adapter. No 30 something inches length printing, only 25.6 max. I don't have a need to print anything larger than that on my Pro 10, so I'm happy with it right now. Now, keep in mind, this is all assuming you're going to use OEM inks, period. For the time being, at least. 17-inch capacity. Again, you have a limitation, 25.6 inches, or with the new firmware, 47 inches. Okay, it's a very tricky method of loading your paper manually. Of course, you have to trim it from a roll and then make sure you feed it correctly. 12 colors on this puppy, 10 colors on the Pro 10. Okay, the gamut is there. Great gamut, great reproduction of color as well. Now, prices vary depending on where you consider buying from, but always look at your manufacturer's suggested price and then shop for the best deal you can get. Some of the American camera companies that are selling these Canon printers are offering rebates. All right, so now pretty much all you have to do is make that choice, bite the bullet, pull the trigger, make that choice and get that printer. I had to write this down, otherwise I would go on forever, and I think I already have. You got the printer, but you really know nothing about printing. I have created a basic printing playlist. Look it up. My channel playlist and look for basic printing and watch those videos. I pretty much cover all of the basics, including theory about inkjet printing and such. And that will lead you down the correct path. The best thing you can do is to watch those videos systematically. 1 through, I don't know how many I have. I think it's 8 or 9, something like that. So once you get the confidence to begin to print, okay, but you haven't yet began, just get it through your head. Get it through your head. This is the hardest thing to get through. You got to print often, period. You got to print often. Don't get into the mentality or the habit of, well, if I print, I'm going to use up expensive ink. Well, then why did you get the printer, right? I mean, to be honest and to be harsh and bold, why did you get the printer, right? So, yes, it is not cheap to print at home, period. It isn't. So consider that. In order to keep that printer healthy, you have to print often. How often? It depends on your conditions. It depends on the printer model. If you live in a very humid environment, you can probably get away with once every 2 weeks, and that's cutting it short, okay? That's really taking a chance. If you can print twice a week, by all means, do so. Now, before you begin to print whatsoever, okay, you have gone through your preparation, you have installed your printhead if it's a Canon printer, you have powered on your Epson printer and has asked you to install the cartridges, you have gone through an ink charge process where ink is either fed through lines like the P800 and the Pro 1000 have, or directly through the printhead. And now you have verified that the printhead has been primed with ink, and now you have to run a couple of extra tests to make sure that everything is running as it should. And that is a nozzle check. The nozzle check will indicate to you that every single of the more than 1,000 something nozzles in your printhead have ink flowing through it. And every one of those nozzles is passing ink as designed. In other words, no blockage, no diminishing, no starvation of ink. On certain brands like Canon, you need ink to keep that printhead cool because it's a thermal printing process, unlike Epson, which is cold firing type process. I don't want to get into that, but keep in mind that you have to go through these steps. Now, once you have verified that your nozzles are 100% printing, then do the head alignment. A lot of the new printers now do it automatically. All you have to do is feed it. Some of the paper they have given you, use a glossy or luster paper for that, not your regular copy paper. Okay, the sensors have to read those little printed squares. They have many different deviations here and there. They have to be able to detect that. and make an accurate correction. Okay, head alignment is something that you must do. Okay, we're not going to get into why. That will cover another video. So once you get done with that, then you can begin to print. But now, here's what you need to do. With this particular printer, you have to internally calibrate it. You cannot internally calibrate the other models that I mentioned. They just don't have that option. This has a built-in densitometer, so you're going to run that process again with some of the paper they have provided you. You run the calibration. That means that once you're done and the printer internally has made any slight corrections that it has to do to ensure that the output is as the factory intended it to be. Well, no, I'll retract that, as the color engineers that designed the printer intended it to be. So now this printer is outputting correctly. All right, now I have basically calibrated my printer. Those cannot be calibrated. The P800, the Pro 10, the Pro 100, Pro 1, any of the other printers cannot be calibrated in this manner. Only Canon Pro 1000s and up, and some of the older IPF series. So you're done with that. Let's go ahead and certify our printer. What does that mean? Well, certification is something that I kind of came about and named, because all it is doing is telling you whether the output of the printer is correct. And it is correct without influence from you, me, your monitor, what you're looking at. So you need some sort of standard. When I work in labs, biological labs, we had standards. Every one of our instruments had to be calibrated to a standard. And so you have to do the same thing with your printer. And for that, we are lucky to have a standard evaluation image. I have a link on my description where you can download it directly from the creators. And also I have it on my Facebook group if you choose to join my group. It is available there as well as many, many other test images that you can use later. Once you get fully acclimated to printing, you can begin to test some of those other images. But now, so we're going to open up that image, and this is critical. Do not edit it in any way, shape, or form. On a printer such as the Epson, anything, you're going to open it, you're going to file print, and then you're going to choose a paper that is made by Epson, whether it's a luster or glossy. The same thing with a Canon. It has to be a paper that the printer has been calibrated for. And choose your quality, whatever the size of the paper that you're printing on, of course. And now what you need to do is tell the driver to control color. In an Epson printer, it'll be color mode, basically, and then ICM. On a Canon printer, if you're using Windows, it will be clicking a little tick box that says color/intensity manual adjustment, then the matching tab, then ICM. That will link, both printers will now be linked to that particular paper type that you chose on the drop-down menu. Boom, you're done. Print it. It should be perfectly neutral. I'm going to look over here for one of the standard images that I have made. And here we have one of the many images that are available. And you just look at this, and you basically look at the skin colors. They are perfect. Grays are neutral. They're linearly neutral. The color passport card seems correct. Everything seems correct. You just look at it. Your eyes will tell you. Let me tell you, your eyes are really, really good tools. You look at this and you look for a color cast. So it's not neutral, in other words. The grays will tell you that immediately. And you're looking for not too bright, not too dark. You're looking for a complete range of tones here. And that, once you achieve that, that tells you that the printer is outputting correctly. So you have verified, in other words, that yeah, the printer on its own, without any influence from me, you, grandma, grandpa, and the monitor or whatever, or your own editing, is producing a correct result or rendition of that image. Okay, next comes calibration of your monitor. Yeah, that's going to set you back some money because you're going to need to buy a spectrophotometer. If you intend to make profiles down the road, the best choice is a spectrophotometer, or you can buy a colorimeter and just use it to calibrate your monitor. If you never ever think you're ever going to make a profile on your own, then a colorimeter will work for you. They're a lot cheaper than the spectros. Okay, so you're going to go back, and now you're going to calibrate your monitor and have it output or visualize that image of yours so that it matches the neutrality that your printer was able to reproduce. So you need a neutral rendition in your monitor. Usually, once you set everything to the correct settings that the software tells you to use during calibration, it will be neutral. It will match in neutrality. In other words, what you see will not be a different color shade or cast, if you will, than the output of your printer. Now you need to mess around with your luminosity levels as well as contrast and all. It'll walk you through all of those steps, okay? And it's almost best to use the advanced mode in some of these. I recommend X-Ray products, by the way, if you were asking me. All right, so now we know that our monitor matches the output of the print made by this printer. And now I know that my printer and my monitor are sort of married together. Well, what does that mean? That means that I can now edit on that monitor and be confident that what I edit visually will be reproduced faithfully by my printer. Let's go to the next topic. Okay, so I got a little far and away from what I was supposed to say, but anyway, apply what you learn. In other words, once you watch that playlist, just remember it. Before you do anything, you need to learn your basic driving skills, written tests, all of that before you actually go practice on the road. Learn your rules, learn your laws, all of that, and then finally get behind the wheel with someone that already is licensed, of course, and learn how to drive. Print only with the driver. Okay, that's the best way to start. Don't get confused with ICC profiles and none of that stuff. If you print with the driver and you choose ICM and you're printing on a Canon paper or an Epson paper, the driver on its own will be using the correct ICC profile, whether you know it or not. You will be printing with an ICC profile, which is what you want to do later on when you choose to use other papers, okay? But not yet. Hang in there, not yet. Stick to and master only one branded paper before moving out to other third-party brands. So I have some ProLuster big old 13 by 19s on the floor, but I'm only going to show you a couple of these boxes here. So I have some Photo Paper Pro Premium Matte. This is fantastic paper, by the way. Really, really good. Again, buy Canon papers or buy Epson papers at first. Do not get confused using all kinds of other brands. It'll drive you nuts, okay? It's like trying to learn multiple musical instruments at once. You know, unless you're a prodigy, you really are going to have a hard time. Stick to one paper and master it. What I mean by that is that when you press print, you could go upstairs or outside, come back 5 minutes later, and you will look at your result and go, oh yeah, I knew it was going to come out that way. I knew it. I don't even have to go back to my monitor to look. It looks perfect. It looks as I intended it to look. So one type of paper for the particular brand of printer you're using, master it inside and out. Use just the driver to print. It's the same as printing with the application controlling color. Okay, if you're using the branded paper. Okay, if you use other papers, that does not apply. But if you're using Epson on an Epson and Canon on a Canon, and you let the driver control color, choosing ICM as the color mode, it's the same thing. It's actually using the matching profile that you have in your hard drive after you installed the driver. All right, next, habits that you need to get into. Print a small print at least twice a week. That can be a 4x6. So go to Staples, buy some cheap paper, okay, and just print it. You're not going to worry about the output. Just print a little 4x6 twice a week, okay? Really. That will really, really help you in the long run. You will never have a clog. Never. Oh my God, it's going to use up ink. Well, it might, but you will use more ink unclogging a clog by not having printed on it for weeks or months at a time. So keep that in mind. Nozzle checks. Nozzle checks should be done once a week, and that will show you absolutely that your nozzles are clean. Canon Pro 1, and again, once in a while, you can do this on regular bond paper or copy paper. Once in a while, I would recommend that you print it on a cheap glossy paper, okay? Something really, really cheap. It could be the cheapest paper you can buy. Print it and then take a loop and look at the lines that are formed, okay? On bond paper, it sort of wicks away and it just looks like a solid band. But it really made out of dots and lines of dots or rows of dots. And you're looking for missing dots. So do that once a week. On the Pro 1000, I don't have one for the Epson, sorry. On the Pro 1000, it's really easy. It's very, very easy to see. If any of these little crosses, I don't know if you can see that. If any of these little crosses are missing, then you know something is not allowing ink to pass through one of those nozzles. So what do you do if you do have a clog? Well, you need to run a cleaning cycle, whether it's Epson or Canon. But if you do this, the printing of the small print every week or twice a week, and the nozzle check, and also prior to any important job. Let's just say I was printing this in one of my videos. It's a shot of my friend Christine, Dr. Christine, by the way. She's an MD now. Her husband to be at that time, beautiful black and white. I didn't want to take a chance and blow this whole sheet of paper before I knew for sure that my Pro 100 was outputting 100%. So I ran a nozzle check prior to printing that. And sure enough, it was perfect. So there you go. That's what you need to do. And get into the habit of doing that. Twice a week, small print. Once a week, nozzle check, and also prior to an important job. Even if you don't print an important job for months, do that. Okay, have a little image ready for you to print. Or if you take a lot of snapshots of your family, just make 4x6s every once in a while, twice a week, and give them out so that people enjoy them at least. That way you're not really printing and wasting ink, creating unusable prints. You're actually creating prints that you can give away to people and at the same time keep your printer happy and exercised. So once you have mastered that one paper, and it could be any paper, I'm sure you're going to get the itch to try other types of papers. Okay. Now, this is Canon ProLuster. ProLuster is one of their most common papers. They give it to you free, a pack of 5 sheets when you buy your printers. It might be semi-gloss, which is a slightly less glossy, if you will, paper. This has a very mild texture. But anyway, they give you this, and it's basically resin coated. It's not a fine art type paper, but it's easy to print on. And once you master it, and once you get a neutral black and white, oh yeah, that's when you pat yourself in the back and you realize, I'm doing this right. Because a neutral black and white is everything. It's everything. Any lack of neutrality would immediately show up on a black and white print. Because if it was full color, especially highly saturated colors, you could not see the difference between a slight shift in color. You could not even notice it. So a neutral black and white tells you that the output of the printer is correct. All right. So that is one of the goals you have to achieve. Now, I have my famous picture of the beta fish here. This is again on ProLuster. But then I received some paper from a company called Breathing Color, Rock River something gloss, whatever it was called, rag. And it is absolutely luscious paper. It almost looks like a real wet lab print. The rendition, color-wise, I think it's right on. I think this even has more detail. It has a wider dynamic range. I can see detail here that gets kind of lost right here. I'm using a custom profile here. So why am I doing that? I'm doing that because this is not a Canon paper. Okay, we're not going to get into that yet. So this is not a Canon paper, so it's going to need a custom profile or download their own ICC profile. But those are made for original inks, and my Pro 100 happens to be using a third-party ink at this time. So the results are fabulous on both types of paper, luster and this very fine art paper right here. This is probably about $3 a sheet. This is about maybe 40 cents a sheet. So that gives you an idea. So This is when you get that itch to try something else. But first, master this one, okay? Before you move on. The reason being, gosh, there's got to be at least a couple hundred types of paper available. You will go nuts. You will absolutely go nuts trying to, master all of these different papers. So here we have some watercolor paper. This paper is not even intended for inkjet printing. So it's going to look a little bit washed out. You know why? It doesn't have a reflective surface. It doesn't even have a coating on it. Just a slight, what they call a sizing. And it's made for watercolor paints. This is for real artists to use. But I went ahead and printed on it using this printer right here. Okay, if you really want to get into the exotics, how about this? This is a whole different process, so don't even think about it. I just want to share this with you at this point. Sublimation printing allows you to print onto aluminum sheets, and look at the gloss on that. These are images that are a little bit red. Okay, that's the way they were. They were given to me by an individual who shot these. And again, the fact that I was able to transfer the images onto aluminum just says everything. Now, when you begin to get into other papers and you begin to sample other papers, you can stick with Canon, you can stick with Epson, and you buy a sample pack. Okay? Pro paper sampler right here. It has some luster, platinum glossy, premium matte, semi-gloss. The same thing with Epson. They will allow you to have the luxury of printing on maybe 4 or 5 of their papers. You'll get a few sheets each, and that way will give you the opportunity, before you shell out some big bucks on a full box of paper, to find out what paper really suits you. Okay, suits you the best, if you will, and of course works best with your printer. Now, once you get away from the original brand papers, you can then explore other manufacturers. I have some Red River right here. This is specialty inkjet media sampler. I'm not going to open it, but it has like 10 different papers inside. And again, you pay about maybe $15-20 for this sample pack. Okay, you might pay $50 for a box of paper. So you see what I mean. Before you get carried away, buy the sampler packs from a couple of companies, not many. There are so many, by the way. So don't get overwhelmed with that either. Just buy a few sample packs. If you want to try Red River, and I'll give you a little secret, many Red River papers match other big brand expensive papers. They're made by the same mill. That's a secret. Keep that hush hush. Alrighty, so that's it. Don't get carried away buying all of these different types of paper. Test them out first by going the sample pack route. Once you go to an external paper, in other words, a third party made by some other manufacturer, then you no longer can print with the driver, because the driver, using ICM mode, only links you to a profile made for those particular papers for which your printer is designed to use, in other words, or matched to use. So you're going to need to download their profiles, and that's a different process. So again, don't get too carried away with that. Not yet, but I'm just telling you, give you a heads up that when you go over to these Red River papers, for instance, you're going to have to download their ICC profiles. They are made for your printer model, and they are made for those specific papers, and also OEM ink only. So if you are thinking about third-party inks at this point, that's not going to work for you. Okay, that's not going to work for you. All right, my last and most important suggestion. Please record what you do, okay, as you are learning. When you arrive at a point where you can get consistently perfect results, not perfect, but you know what I mean, like you expect results, stick to that consistency. Operating systems allow you to save certain settings in your printer drivers so that you can repeat them. Utilities such as QImage Ultimate and QImage 1 allow you to save every single aspect of a print job. I have 13 printers in this room, so I can save every single printer settings for any job that I created for any of my 13 printers, whether I worked on whatever papers I have in third-party or OEM inks. I can save them, and I can always go back to that particular job, reopen it. I can choose to disregard the original images and just give me the settings that I use for that job, and I can load my own images, and it will just repeat it, and my results will be as good as when I originally printed that previous job, which came out perfect or near perfect. I keep saying perfect. I like that word. Anyway, so you see what I mean. Consistency, consistency, consistency. You cannot haphazardly just print differently one day and then the next day another day and this and that and keep changing settings here and there. You'll go nuts. You lose. You see what happened to me? I used to have hair. One of these days I'm going to share a picture of me when I had a full head of hair on my head. Black and beautiful, luscious hair. Yes, I did. All right, so that is it. I hope I didn't bore everyone. I hope this is more concise than what I normally do, which is, a little bit of hint here, a little hint over there, and, multiple videos. No, I wanted to put it all in one single video. I'm going to cover this tomorrow, by the way, after we get done talking with Mike Lee from Precision Colors. Okay, I hope I can put out this video tonight. I'll try. All right, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. And again, consider this hobby. Yes, it is a pain in the, you know what? It can be very frustrating, but if you do everything correctly and systematically and consistently, you will have the best results and also the most rewarding results that you can imagine. Again, this is a blast. So keep that in mind. Happy printing, everybody. Bye-bye.